Barshens is brought to you by our awesome patrons. Thanks for supporting the channel.
You're Stephen Hawking! He knows who he is. You look just like him.
Record my voicemail message.
Do the thing.
Barshens.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Barshens. Today, we are joined... Hello, Stuart.
Hello, Barry.
We are joined by... I'm actually fangirling. Stuart, you can introduce.
This is David Doak, or as you may also know him, Dr Doak, or possibly first scientist in multiplayer.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think you can yes.
Yeah.
Those were the days.
I think you're the first person I've met. I haven't said this to you yet. I've actually shot you many times.
Right. If you aren't going to shoot him today, get the suitcase first or you fail the mission.
Yes.
Door decoder.
Door decoder. Yeah. What's the door decoder? Was it in a suitcase or have I just horribly misremembered?
It looked like some kind of 80s mobile phone or something. It was a made-up thing. It was part of making up keys. GoldenEye's full of keys that aren't called keys. That's basically...
That's the secret of game development,
That's the secret. That's it, yeah. Just bottle that. There you go.
So, David, if you were to write your own Wikipedia, could you summarise yourself in a paragraph?
The paragraph, I was
Audio
a scientist, then I made video games, now I do some teaching.
That works
Lots of interesting
nicely
topics.
for me.
Shall we have a sharticle?
Let's do this thing.
I'll play the theme
Oh,
now.
yes.
Damn you, phone lock.
Right. From the Eastern Daily Press. So there's a nice local one. Hell awaits. I'm pleased to say there is more to the headline.
Okay.
Council threatened with black magic after meadow is fenced off to dog walkers.
What?
And it immediately leads into a really interesting photo, which I will describe for the audio people, of basically wooden crucifixes laid down in front of a fence.
Slightly Blair Witch.
Yeah. So they've ripped them off of their fence or something.
Well, apparently so. A newly erected fence has been vandalised in Attleborough using the power of black magic. So it's to keep dogs
crowbar.
off. Yes.
Yeah.
Runes on the crowbar. Yes.
Mystic runes. Yeah.
It was the erected a fence to try and keep dogs off certain parts of Gamers Meadow.
So do you know these places? This is in Norwich area, is it?
Attleborough,
or-
just outside.
Okay.
Just outside, yep. I'm not fully aware of Gamers Meadow. We may have walked a dog there years ago. No idea. But, oh, God. Part of the fence has been taken down and laid out in the form of crosses with fake blood smeared across other parts. That means it's fake magic, surely.
Fake dark magic.
As opposed to real dark magic.
Could they not manage pentacles?
Wouldn't have hurt them, would it? You know,
That would have really...
pentacle of salt. Oh, then it rains.
Yeah.
That's always the problem, isn't it? Yeah.
So they're saying that that's happened as a result of the fence being put up. So dog walkers are angry. So angry dog walkers have summoned black magic.
Yes.
And
There's a lot of dark wizards in the dog walking community,
that's right.
apparently. Yeah.
I mean, when I walk my dog at night, I sometimes see a few people that could pass as a dark wizard, you know, or dark lord or something.
Are they actively constructing magic wands
They
out of
could be,
fences?
yeah. They're not picking their poo up, but that's another story.
That's how you know they're evil.
That's
Yes.
right. They're standing it.
The Mayor of Attleborough has described the actions as unsavoury and sinister, and they have been reported to the police.
Okay.
The Harry Potter
Who were
unit.
right on it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Murder or
Black magic department.
Thousands of people in a room waiting for the phone to ring. At last.
Oh, we knew this was coming.
It's like Ghostbusters. They ring a bell and they go.
comes in on a broom. Like,
What were they called in Harry Potter? The
I have not seen Harry Potter.
auras. You haven't seen Harry. I don't know why I'm
There
surprised.
were something else.
Yeah.
My daughter's reading them at the moment, so she knows more about it than I do.
Is she enjoying them?
Yeah, she had a nightmare the other night, so I don't know what chapter she got to. So apparently it's getting dark.
Dementors. Maybe the Dementors.
Oh, maybe, yeah.
Basically anything from sort of the end of book 2 onwards, pretty
It starts to get pretty
stuff.
dark, does it? Yeah.
There's 14 murders a page in the 5th book. Amazing. Yeah.
I suppose maybe they had to make it more aggressive as he got older, maybe. Or
I think the idea is that, like, the first book is aimed at 11-year-olds, the second one at 12-year-olds, the third one at 13-year-olds, so it kind of goes along like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't actually know if that's accurate, but somebody told me once. So,
and the movies are like that as well?
Well, the movie's got kind of darker as well.
Right, okay.
yeah, particularly the last ones are really quite...
Okay, I'll keep him off that for a while. I'll keep it on Peppa Pig.
Yeah.
That's pretty full on then, that story. It's quite over the top, isn't it, for like being angry about... Maybe it shot off their access path or something like that. But the fake blood is taking it up another notch. That's some good prep right there.
2 sinister notes have been pinned to the fence. A £5 and a £10. And they're not sinister, they're just Scottish, for God's sake. Signed in a red substance by someone calling themselves the Midnight Rambler.
Ooh.
Batman's least feared villain.
That's a show on BBC Two, isn't it?
Just standing there at midnight, talking crap.
You find one of them in every local pub.
It's not very dark.
It's
the
not
Midnight
really,
Rambler, is it?
No.
What are you doing? Out for a walk. Anything else? No.
No. I may walk some more.
Yeah. As long as it's always midnight somewhere.
Oh, they've given the transcript of one of the notes. Give dogs back their freedom and not to be fenced in. Dogs use this park more than anyone else, and their wonderful owners. They use the park more than they use their
wonderful owners.
Oh my gosh.
The midnight grammatician, this is not. If you don't, hell awaits. 666.
Wow.
The number of the beast.
You see, I think this is
Does it have a little paw print?
Oh, I hope so. Rex. No longer a good boy. Yeah. So basically, people weren't picking up the dog poo on that part of the field. And people got fed up with it, so they fenced it off. Yeah. At which point the Dark Lord Voldemort rose from his pit and rambled a bit.
Oh, God. Yeah, I see so many people not picking up their dog poo. It's quite... I could do a whole podcast.
Well, the fence would be good, because normally what they do is they take a poo bag and then put it in the bag and then hang it on the fence and then leave it.
Yeah. I reckon there's a theory of people that do that get caught. They'll pick it up and then they'll just sling it in a tree. Because I walk past people and they've got no intention of picking it up, and then like, watching you,
and then as soon as you go
pick it up, and then they're like that, and it's like hanging. Like what?
You walk through the Mousehold Woods in Norwich, and yes, a lot of these blue bags just of poo just hanging from trees, and I'm pretty sure they don't grow there. So
yeah, it must become a bit abstract art after a while. I kind of miss it, but yeah. So can I talk about GoldenEye a teeny bit? Is that all right?
Yes, you can talk about whatever.
Because I spent like nearly a whole year, like 365 days. I missed the entire summer because I played GoldenEye with my friends.
I thought you were going to say you spent that long working out how to get the cartridge in.
yeah. Taste it. The new games you were saying, there's a Nintendo Switch. They put something on so you can't eat.
Yeah. No, have you tasted one?
I really want to do a taste
you have
test.
to. That's the first thing you do if you got one.
Yeah. I just downloaded it on the store, but now I want to actually get a
the
physical.
digital ones don't taste of anything.
You can eat them all day and you never put on calories.
But my routers, taste the same. But yeah, I played that for. Yeah, I mean, loads of people play that game for like. I mean, it was probably up there one of my favourite games ever. But there was obviously a scene in it where there's a Dr. Doak, and that is actually yourself, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And is it your face?
Yeah. So it was the really early days of 3D polygonal characters, and we decided that we would map the faces of the people at Rare onto them. So all the characters in there are people at Rare, and not just the team. So kind of general support staff and stuff. And there were a few ladies, like Sally was one. I can't remember, Viv or whatever, who used to come round and collect from our little pits your cups and stuff and things that you would
coding.
And Sally was like, she kind of, any cups? And we have cups. And she's in there as well. And there's a cheat where actually the characters end up having their proper names. So it's the first names. So if you look for it online, you'll see, and it has all of those kind of figures have their first names instead.
So a cleaner is in the game.
Yeah. Well, people like that were really important because so you're in this place kind of 24/7 almost.
Yeah, it's quite intense sort of setting then, is it? Is there like deadlines?
It certainly was then. I mean, the games industry's kind of tried to clean up its act about that now. But at the peak of GoldenEye, we were doing kind of 100-hour weeks, which is
Wow.
is ruinous, really.
Yeah.
So that was quite similar to Red Dead Redemption 2 that came out recently. There was an article where all the people that were working on it were doing well over the legal limit, but they were just like, well, this is it. You know, when there's a deadline to hit, everyone mucks in.
The crunch, they used to call it.
Yeah, and they still call it crunch. And it's a strange thing because it's, in some ways, it's very productive. You know, when people are focused and really gunning for something, you can get a lot done very quickly. But it's not sustainable. It's kind of like, you know, if you imagine you're doing something yourself and you get really into it, you'll spend a lot of time. Yeah. If it's a bunch of people making something which is fun like a game, that you can get carried away, and it's quite addictive. But it's, you know, it's not a good thing. It ruins people.
Yes, absolutely. It's not good for your health at all in any sense.
Could you get a sense that you were like working on something like groundbreaking or as big as it ended up being when you're making it? Is it like when you work on different games, is there one that like, nah, this is terrible? Or
well, for that team, it was kind of the first game a lot of us had worked on.
Right.
So when we were making it, we were very much kind of like, we just need to get it done, and a lot of it was that there was, are there things about it which will mean that it doesn't get done, just because the final hardware wasn't as powerful as it was supposed to be, so a lot of things ran really slowly, and that was a really big thing with GoldenEye. I was trying to keep the frame rate up. I mean, if you look back at it now, I mean, the frame rate does drop considerably to, you know, you wouldn't consider it playable by modern standards. I mean, everyone's trying to get things around at 60. Yeah, because we were just trying to get as much performance out of the machine as possible, and to have the environments as busy and as interesting as possible. I mean, that was a big thing about it. You know, kind of like things exploding, this, that, and the other, interactable stuff, things that hadn't really happened in FPSs before.
I remember the sniper rifle being particularly impressive at the time. It's like, my God, it actually zooms in and you can shoot things.
So and again, that's interesting. That was Sir Mark Edmonds who was doing the code for the guns and stuff, and we kind of just decided that was like, well, yeah, that would be a thing to try. And it's instantly very gratifying, and it works. And I think at the same time, MDK, Murder, Death, Kill, had a sniper rifle as well.
Shiny Entertainment, yeah.
And it was one of those things where it was because you'd only really made the move to 3D games and first-person 3D games in a polygonal environment where you can change the field of view on the camera. It's one of those things, you know, it just becomes, yeah, it's a must-have. Goes on.
Was there anything that you sort of touched on there? Was there anything that you sort of missed out? You know, sort of the deadlines. Was there any things that were missed out of the game that you're like, right, we really want to do that, but it got cut out?
Yeah, there was. I mean, there's loads of stuff, but it had a very open-ended brief. I mean, it was supposed to be like the film, so we had, you know, we had levels which were levels that had to match with the film. I remember, and we were always thinking about cutting things. So when we were desperate trying to get finished, we had to have the dam and we had to have the cradle at the end because they were kind of at the beginning and end of the film. The St. Petersburg streets was always a nightmare to get to work. I mean, if you look at it in the game, it's kind of made up of a tile set and stuff, and the tank's a bit of a strange thing, but the tank was, if you look at the GoldenEye film trailer, that's one of the things. Yeah. It's Brosnan in the tank, and that's the kind of, and the tank, that tank scene kind of replaced the car scenes in a way, because the car scenes in GoldenEye is only, I think there's a little bit at the start and stuff where they're chasing around. Yeah, and there's you know, there were loads of bits of extra levels, multiplayer levels and stuff that got cut and stuff. If you're making a game, you always have to cut stuff. And also in that time period, obviously it was cartridge based, so when you made something, it was finised and you could never touch it again. Right. Which is considerably different to how things
like now downloadable add-ons and things like that.
Did the sort of massive success of the multiplayer aspect, did that take you by surprise, or was that something you always thought would be a big popular bit?
When we were making it, we always played a lot of kind of multiplayer Doom and The Office and stuff and things, and we loved when it was working in the game. We loved the kind of the fact that it was just split screen, and there was a fair amount of skepticism about it from kind of rare management and people just saying, well, how would it work? It's not going to work because you can see the other person's screen, but actually that becomes part of the whole kind of social interaction of it and things. And
back then you would say, oh, I need another computer and another TV sometimes. I remember that when you'd be like, I want to play multiplayer with my friends. You'd be like, oh, well, I need you have a cable.
And I mean, Nintendo 64 has 4 controller ports, doesn't it? So straight.
Well, and that was, I think that was, I mean, that was really significant. So about the time GoldenEye came out, there wasn't really console first-person shooters, I think the Medal of Honor first one had come out, maybe. There was some ports of Doom and stuff. Turok was coming out. But as you say, it was at that stage, an N64 console was as powerful as your pretty mid to high-end gaming PC.
Yes.
And you had the 4 controller ports, so you could instantly play that, without all of the messing about LAN stuff and things
that
like
was
that.
it.
So I think that was really pivotal. And a lot of, particularly, you talk to people over the years, and loads of Americans will say, meet American people who'd been maybe at college at the time. They said, well, it was the college game of choice, because all the college dormers would have people playing multiplayer and stuff and things. So,
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, to this day, you can go into. I went to a pub in Newcastle recently, and there's GoldenEye like in one corner connected to an old CRT, and they're not even advertised as like a gaming cafe. It's just or gaming pub. It's just it's so ubiquitous to this day.
I've never walked into a pub and seen that.
Have you ever been recognised?
Absolutely.
I was going to say, how often do you get people go, do I know you from somewhere? Like, probably shot me in GoldenEye.
You got a briefcase, like, you mean this?
Here's the decoder. I carry 12 of me at all times. Just produce them from my flesh.
Yeah.
Here you are.
People don't recognise me from it, because I don't look very much like the character. Well,
But it was your face, right?
Yeah. But onto a kind of slightly trapezoid.
Pushed into like a diamond or something. Yeah.
But if I go to a gaming thing or something, then that's always what people say. It's like because and in the game, it's in the game, it's one of those things. It's like you got to meet up with this character, and it's a bit annoying to find him because he's in a random place. And it gives you a key, and you're not really supposed to shoot him, but what are you going to do? It's that FPS thing, isn't it? It's like if you're in a world and you have a hammer, then everything looks like a nail.
That's right. But like, if you did get shot, like, you wouldn't get what you needed. You needed to get the briefcase off first.
I think if you got the decoder first,
you can shoot him afterwards. Yeah. And then he just counts as a civilian casualty or something.
Ah, yes.
Because we had to put that was the thing we had to put in.
Because Bond is supposed to be a good guy, isn't he? So.
Well, again, that's an interesting thing. So when we obviously we made it, there wasn't the modern Bond films. It was only up to the Brosnan film, and myself and particularly Martin Hollis, we were very much kind of Connery was Bond to us. And actually, the body count in Bond, in those older Bond films, is very high.
Yeah, just
because there's always a bit at the end where there's just loads of people going, pew, falling off stuff. Yeah. But there are places in the fiction where he just does very callous things, because the character, there's a bit in Doctor No where he just shoots someone. He's got the information he wants, but he's got a license
the decoder
to kill,
and now he's going to shoot Dr. Doak.
He's got a license to kill. So
the whole, I think I read it, but putting your faces in, it was a joke initially, and then you were going to take it out, and then it stayed in or something?
The joke, the faces were in because just we did it for all the characters.
Yeah,
I did all of the single player kind of setup and design in the levels. So and because I was a scientist and because I have a doctorate.
Yeah, so you are actually Dr. Doak as well.
And it was science things. So I put it in as Dr. Doak, just because we needed a name for the character, with expecting it to be taken out. We were a bit naughty schoolboyish with management. I think that happens everywhere. So Tim Stamper had seen it and said, well, that needs to come out. So Martin took it out, but he just didn't like having edicts placed on him. So we then later put it back in. Or I think Martin put it back in again quite late. It was just the name, quite late in the day. And I think we pulled the line of when it was suggested that, well, you put it back in, you need to take it out again. It was, well, but all the strings have gone off for localization stuff now, and it might slow things down in some nebulous way.
Yeah, it's too late now, guys. It'd be such work to take it out at this stage. Oh, mate, yeah. Oh, one of my favourite excuses.
Yeah, and it was, personally, it's quite a fun thing because it kind of my name's intimately associated with the game.
It's like a piece of history being on it.
It's an oddly memorable character. I don't know if that's because he's always in a different place. So you always have it in your head, right, got to find Dr. Doak, where is he this time?
Yeah. And GoldenEye's not the only game that you worked on. Is it Time Splitters as well?
It would have gone into Perfect Dark first.
So after GoldenEye, it was what we're going to do next, and there was talk of doing another Bond game. The team were kind of a bit bonded out.
Yeah. Understandable, yeah.
So we got to write our own fiction, which kind of, I guess I wrote most of it at the start.
So did you write the story of GoldenEye as well?
Well, the GoldenEye story is very much based on the movie, with
Yeah.
a few. I think Duncan Botwood, he did the early level design, and he made a few of the levels kind of fill in backstory.
Yep.
So it's quite cleverly threaded through the events of the movie. And then we wanted to do. We really liked sci-fi, and we wanted to do something a bit, with some aliens in it. And we had, and I think it was something we call it conspiracy theory, or it was all this kind of stuff. And then we just, because we wanted to have a female character, which there was a fair amount of resistance to, but we just say, well, yeah, it's,
like Tomb Raider, I guess.
Yeah.
well, you kind of had the thing. Well, even then, it's taken a long time for the video games industry to become inclusive, certainly, and diverse in terms of the actual avatars that you get to play. And I think a large part of that was, all of the publishers were very conservative. It was always like, well, our target demographic is, these 16 to 25-year-old males. So if we go outside that, we don't know what's outside there. We're not going to go there. And then so Tomb Raider has the thing where actually, the avatar's kind of fetishized, isn't it? It's like, it's all about watch her doing gigantic, and it's third person, so you're always looking at her from behind, and the kind of the curves such as they are, and whatever.
I used to like getting the waiter locked in the freezer. See how we do that?
Oh, yes.
Was that in the second one?
Tomb Raider
Just
2.
letting them follow you, and you'd be like,
yes.
"Oh, shut the door," and you'd be like,
So for Perfect Dark, we were saying, well, no, we kind of want to have a fairly badass female character, and it's loosely based on. I kind of like there's a Robert Heinlein novel, Friday. I think she's an assassin. And that was part of the kind of touchstone for it. And then names, we came up with Joanna Dark at one point. We came up with Perfect Dark. Martin and I used to just have a random string generator running on the computer. And every now and again you'd look at it and go, oh, that's not bad. So that's where Perfect Dark came from, and then Joanna Dark was the core of that, and then it kind of latterly it's like, it's a bit like Joan of Arc, so it's kind of like it doesn't mean absolutely shit all, but sounds like you're doing something clever.
Did you have a sister called Velvet Dark?
That sounds like some kind of one of those luxurious
It does
ice cream chocolate lollipop
Magnum or something.
Yeah, Magnum, a Velvet Dark.
Yeah, that was the name of like the sister in Canon or something, or like another.
Yeah, I think it got expanded later, but I didn't stay. I mean, we left.
yeah, absolutely.
So I was kind of like erased from that. So I'm not on any of the credits and stuff for it, but kind of.
So what's the sort of just as an overview? I know nothing about the industry. What's the procedure with gaming in terms of there's the developer and then there's the publisher? Is that right? And then it goes to the market.
It's completely changed now. I mean, really, in the 90s and early 2000s, it was the model that we ended up involved in after Rare as an independent studio was there's a developer. You might be an independent developer.
Yeah.
And then there'll be the publisher who has the wherewithal to pay for the development.
So is that Rare the publisher? Would they have been?
So Rare were the developer and Nintendo were the publisher.
Okay, yeah, but the publisher could be on many platforms depending on.
Yeah, so they call a first party publisher is when the publisher owns the console. So Sony and Sega and
So that's like the top of the tree, really. And then
but it's their thing. So there's just the developer and the publisher in that relationship.
right.
And of course, if you do that, you don't see the game on other consoles.
Yeah,
'cause
so
it'll
it's like a
always go
direct,
straight to
a lot of exclusivity. Yeah. I just wonder how sort of GoldenEye. Like, is it like a pitch? Do people pitch for it now and go, like, right, here's a GoldenEye game, and all these developers are, I'm going to make it. This is how we would do it, or
You get in. So Bond has a license to it's licensed it's licensed IP.
Yeah.
So when GoldenEye, the kind of, I guess the way things used to be, people say, well, licensed film games are shit. because they generally were.
Right.
You know, it'd
Remember
be like
Robocop,
it'd be like
that
a
one?
spin-off. Yeah, so the RoboCop was quite. That's the thing we had the
Crosshair.
with Crosshair.
Yeah.
Where they had to shoot between her legs. And
Yes,
that's right.
Yeah.
That was a weird thing, is in like the mid to late 80s, a game based on a movie is like, oh, this is going to be good. It's going to have all different levels and have a lot of money thrown at it.
They used to be
and
worse,
then it
didn't they?
kind of,
Like,
went off a cliff. And as you say, it got to a stage where it's like, oh, movie game. You know, that was a
Yeah.
bad
So
sign.
the Bond games license was probably quite easy to get hold of, and I think what had happened was Nintendo had got hold of it.
Yep.
And they had no real plan for what kind of game it was going to be. And Rare were going to make a side-scrolling platformer.
Yep.
And then Martin Hollis, who was team leader on Bond, said, no, we used to call it Bond.
Yeah.
It was Bond and Diggers. Diggers was beside. So Blast Call was called Diggers.
Oh, Blast! Oh, God, I love Blast Call.
Because for a long time it just had a big digger, and it's just that it's a game with digger.
I kind of wish it was still called Digger. I quite enjoy that. Yeah.
Martin was keen to run a team,
Right.
and that was given the opportunity, but wanted to make a 3D game, and it was going to be like a kind of like virtual cop, on rail shooter, and then it became what it became.
So I watched Bandersnatch recently, and for some reason I've got this idea in my head of all these deadlines. I'm just wondering who actually sets those deadlines. Of you give me that perception now of, is it Nintendo in that instance that put that pressure on? Or?
Well, I mean, they want to have a stream of product to market, and it was always very seasonal. So there'd be like times,
like Christmas and things.
So in the games industry, Thanksgiving is really important because that's like if you're launching there, then you'll get the sales because that's a really big buying weekend in the States, and then you're out for Christmas for sure.
You got everyone's talking about it over Thanksgiving and that second wave,
and then it builds up. The problem with games is it's generally quite difficult to forecast when they're going to be finished, particularly if you're building the technology as well as the art.
Yeah.
So GoldenEye was a game we were building technology. So and I think it took about 3 years in the end. I wasn't on it for 3 years.
3 years. Wow.
Yeah.
God.
2.5, 3 years. I mean, that's not,
No. With animation and things, I was surprised how long stuff like that takes. But I mean,
yeah, and all the tech changes. So on GoldenEye, the 3D animation in GoldenEye was all done using motion capture with these mechanical motion capture systems, which were very strange.
Yeah.
Now it's all optical. And then there's lots of assistance for it and stuff.
yeah.
And
So the technology could change. You start day one, and by that 3 years is over, you could, we could have done that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean the example that people gonna give is, it's like, if you're in a movie business, but every time you made a movie, you completely re-engineered cameras from scratch. So that's what you're doing in day one.
Yeah.
So you can't be doing the shooting because you haven't got the cameras.
Sure.
Or you might shoot it on some other cameras and then later go, we need to reshoot it.
Was using Oddjob cheating on that game, in your opinion?
No
slaps
Oddjob,
only.
slaps only.
Golden
Come on,
gun as
come
well.
on.
Yeah, because I could never hit him. My friend would always like run around, and he was like half the height of. Obviously, Jaws was the big character, but don't know. Would you consider that cheating?
It was good because it added variety to the characters. I mean, in the multiplayer, you can scale all of the health and stuff anyway in the sliders. I mean, I did a talk about this a couple of years ago, and I kind of looked. It strikes me that we made him shorter than he actually was in the films.
Because it was the Papa guy with the hat as well, wasn't it? I don't know if you even hit the hat and didn't kill him.
Baron Samedi.
Baron Samedi, that's right, yeah. I was going to say Papa Shango, that's the wrestler, isn't it?
Yes.
Looks a bit like him.
Must have had enough trouble getting the Bond license. WWF as well.
Go down that route, yeah.
But I think the thing that with the Oddjob character, I think there's two things. One is that in all the film stills, he's always doing this. So he's always throwing the hat. So he's kind of like
crouching down.
crouching down.
Yes.
So you kind of in your mind, maybe he's shorter. And then also there's the Micmac, Knick-Knack, what the guy from
Hervé. I can't remember his name.
He's the Here Comes the Plane boss, isn't he?
Yes.
Yeah.
The plane. Yes. Ricardo Montalban. Yes.
Yeah. And he's really short.
Yes, yeah.
So I think there was kind of, maybe it got smeared in our heads.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah,
I wasn't sure because would always whoever was the best player would always be not be Oddjob because it was just like no
he's for
chance.
beginners.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a crutch for the incompetent.
Yeah, it really was. Yeah, and Jaws was just so tall as well.
That's what the actor who played Oddjob called his autobiography. Yes.
Never got to meet any of the Bond characters or anything.
No, we went to the set at was it Shepperton or wherever it was when they were doing Tomorrow Never Dies. So it was all set up like the kind of there's like a shantytown thing, and
cool.
Michelle Yeoh was there and Pierce Brosnan, but we were just
Was that to get inspiration for the game in some way?
It was after. It was when we were possibly going to be doing that game.
Oh wow!
Yes.
So we went there, and it was interesting to go on a big film set, but they had no interest in us.
Right. Yeah. I said Pierce Brosnan came up. He made this game. And I wonder if he'd ever played it or anything. But
I think they made him. There's a clip of him playing it on some American talk show.
Jimmy Fallon.
Yeah. They make him play it. To go, oh, what's this?
Play the game, Pierce.
Wow. Have you got a favourite game you've ever developed? Would it be GoldenEye, or is there a personal favourite of yours?
It's probably Second Sight.
Okay.
So that would have been
the game we made
with Free Radical when you did Time Splitters first.
Yeah.
Then Second Sight came after that, didn't it?
Yeah. So when we left Rare, we kind of at the time it was a fairly common thing to happen with developers. It was like a bunch of people had split off from various things, and we did a deal with IDOS as a publisher.
Yeah,
so they
did Championship Manager.
They did Champman, and they
Again.
were at the same time they were doing Hitman, who was just starting and stuff. I mean, that was like the first Hitman game with IO was about exactly the same time. Yeah, so we did a deal with them, and we had an idea for a story game, which I'd written all of the story for, which was this about this psychic guy, and that was the game we were going to make. And then we changed our mind because we wanted to. That was going to take like 3 years, and it turned out that PlayStation 2 got delayed, which meant that if we did a game in a year and a half, we could hit the launch. So that was and we really wanted to kind of like test. We didn't want to be a company that spent 3 or 4 years and went and didn't make something. But I'm really fond of Second Sight just because of the storytelling and stuff in it. But I guess and then they were all fun to make.
And what about the opposite of that? Is there a game that you've made and you're like, oh gosh, I mean, it didn't make it, or you just re-released it and you're like...
When Free Radical... So the end of Free Radical was we made a game called Haze. So we'd made...
Cider. To me,
It's a game about cider. I don't know why I didn't work.
Oh, yes, it is, yes.
You've been drinking air freshener again,
First
Barry.
person air freshener game, that's the future. Just get rid of a scent. Wow.
But that came out of, we'd made these Time Splitters games, which were very, just very fun first person shooters with everything in them, just loads and loads of fun. And they were always successful in terms of what they critically received, and they sold well. We were always trying to find a publisher who really understood them, and we just endlessly. So this is kind of like early 2000s. Endlessly have publishers saying, "Oh, we don't really know how to market this."
So the game was already made at that point. Or...
Well, we'd be making them, and it was so you need to make it more. Just people like it, but you need to make it more like this.
Okay.
So that it'll make it easier.
edgier.
It'll make it easier for the marketing people because they're bears with a little brain, and it's kind of like needs to be really narrow.
So this is Haze, sorry.
Well, we ended up. So Haze happened because of us getting to a position where publishers were going, we don't make these funny comic cartoony action things because nobody likes them. Yeah. You know how unpopular they are now.
I was going to say, Fortnite? What?
No. Fortnite, Overwatch, no. Team Fortress, nothing like that.
You've had like 3 really big selling games with Time Splitters as well.
I thought you might have built up some
but
trust.
if nobody liked it, you probably wouldn't have made 3 of them. I mean, it's fairly...
Yeah, but they, the first one was a kind of like our moonshot. Second one, we kind of hit our stride with IDOS. Then we kind of fell out with IDOS because we were looking at we kind of fell out with them because Time Splitters 2, if you look at all the Metacritic and everything about it, it was just off the chart at the time across 3 platforms, but the sales weren't, and they'd be going, it did really well. I said, well, did it really do really well? Could have done more. It's like because it takes us, we're only ever going to be able to make a certain number of games. It's taking us 2 years to make a game, so
Yeah, you've got to really know you're going to
You need to sell it.
So, yes. Yeah.
So we then EA came and courted us and said, "No, come to EA. Yeah, well, yes. We treat you real nice, very special." And I think I likened it in an interview once. It's like you go there, but actually it's Borstal, and there are boys with cue balls and socks.
Oh. Drink from this cursed chalice, just ever so sweet. Yes.
And they didn't understand it either. And also, you look at EA. I mean, the success, but they get involved in all kinds of ludicrous missteps with stuff. So they had like Amy Hennig, and they were going to make that amazing Star Wars game. And they'd spent an absolute shitload of money on it. I said, no, it's not going to work. We've changed our mind. There's no loot boxes, shiny. And it's like, for God's sake,
monetization, please, guys. Yeah.
We made Transformers Future Perfect for EA.
Yeah.
And although the game I think the game's fantastic, it didn't sell enough to make money back into Free Radical to the extent that we could pay. We were very keen to pay bonuses to everyone who worked on it, but the money's got to come to us.
So EA released it then?
Yeah, they funded it and published it. So their excuse was, well, we didn't know how to sell it. Didn't know how to sell it. It wasn't a narrow enough thing. And then we went and talked.
It does sound a bit to me like saying, "Yeah, great game you made, but we don't really know how to do our jobs."
Isn't that their job? Yeah.
That was pretty much what they said. So then we got involved, and then it was going to be the next gen. So this is just as we going to X360, PlayStation 3, next generation of consoles, and we went and talked to loads of people, and they all kind of wanted us to make something a bit edgy. So Haze was supposed to be a kind of Black Hawk Down, Apocalypse Now kind of edgy story about war. But everyone in the studio wanted to make. We like making silly stuff. Silly stuff was fun. Anyway, so that's what we were doing, and we ended up doing it with Ubisoft, and Ubisoft were great, apart from that having pitched this really edgy thing to them, we just said the same. You can make it. It's got to be really edgy and dark, and we really like Black Hawk Down and all the mood pieces and the dead bodies and all this kind of stuff, and this idea that it's drugs. But it's got to be, we don't want to get higher than the teen rating.
So we want a really edgy game about super soldiers who are controlled by mind-altering drugs, but the kids have got to be able to play.
It's like making Terminator a PG film or something.
Yeah.
So that wasn't good. And then also, we were that thing about making the cameras to make the film. We were making a whole bunch of new technology, and we struggled because it was a big step, and loads of other companies struggled in that transition. We got Haze out. And it had suffered from a really troubled development. However, so it's like there are things about the game which are really good, and there are things about it which are not good.
Yeah.
But and also you're always compared to the greatest thing you've ever done. So everyone's kind of going, well, what's happened there? It's all gone to shit. And then we work with these people.
Yes.
Oh, you created a Star Wars game?
So we went. So anyway, we then got courted by LucasArts.
Oh,
so come and make. So Battlefront 1 and Battlefront 2 have been really successful games. You guys made Time Splitters. It's all kind of multiplayer and stuff and things. Why don't you make Battlefront 3? And after Haze, we kind of we've made our own thing. We got stuck in all kinds of trouble. We need to do something safe.
Yes,
this looks really, really safe. And all the people in the studio who were kind of demoralised by making something which wasn't frivolous, like Time Splitters, like I said, you can't go near any game dev studio without finding Star Wars tat all over the place.
Yeah,
so everyone has Star Wars tat, and they all love Star Wars. So that seemed like a no-brainer. But that went wrong.
Oh really? Oh no.
That went staggeringly wrong.
Or was it?
Again, there was technology. We were building technology. The game, the scope of it was insane.
The pressures they put on you.
Well, the scope. So it was kind of it started out as can you make Battlefront 2 for next generation?
Okay.
So that absolutely, that sounds brilliant. Yes, let's do that. But can you make it? We've got this idea. We like, there was some stuff you're flying around and you're on capital ships, these big ships, and you're on a planet. So it'd be really good if you could be on the ground and you could go out and you can wave your lightsaber and do this, and then grab a guy and pull him out and take this X-wing and take off and fly up and dogfight and then fly up into space and dogfight and go into the capital ship and do all. So this was called the vertical battlefront.
Okay.
So so you need to have some jargon. So I spent many hours in conference calls at unsociable times with California talking about the VBF.
Okay.
The vertical battlefront. How are we going to make this work? How are we going to make it busy and populated all the time? But it's like, well, can you make something that procedurally generates Star Wars films? Basically, is what it was going to be. So it was undoable. I mean, now some open world stuff now has kind of got. It's like No Man's Sky. But it's like making No Man's Sky 10 years before.
Okay.
With that technology, but also populating it and making it really interesting, because No Man's Sky is pretty empty.
It's very.
But this isn't empty. This has got Star Wars excitement and stuff.
Other people playing it all at once. And
funny story about that. When you were saying about not watching Star Wars films, so I loved I remember going to see the first Star Wars film that came out, and I was 10, I guess, and it was just amazing. It was just the most wonderful thing. And then enjoyed the second one, less the third one. And wasn't really into Star Wars that much. That I had that memory, and then the prequels came out, and I never want to watch these. So, and people say, "Oh, David, you watched?" I said, I'm not interested.
I don't think it's going to take off, to be honest.
Well, I just did, and then we had this. We were going to LucasArts to talk to them about making the Star Wars game.
I don't no longer.
Well, no. So I then had this weekend where I just binge watched all the Star Wars stuff, and then went there and kind of completely pulled it off as being an acolyte, because it was so fresh in my head. They'd be talking about something, I go, oh yes, that reminds me, oh yes, he really knows his Star Wars, he must love it.
Like the Star Wars phone case and stuff like that.
So you mentioned that one thing about the storytelling. I found that really interesting. Like, for non-licensed stuff, where do the ideas come from, the stories, and what's that process of creating the whole
for non-licensed stuff?
Like where does it come from?
I mean, it's, the thing is, I haven't made many games really. So like for storytelling Perfect Dark, I just sat down and tried to make some stuff. I mean, it's all fairly cliched sci-fi stuff. Second Sight was interesting. I had a thing where I wanted it to be, the starting point for Second Sight was that if you play a game like certainly the way GoldenEye and things work, it's probably less so now. You'd play through a level, and then you'd die. I mean, that's what happens, isn't it? You're going through a story, but as you go through it, I should go in that direction. As you're going through it, you come to a block where you die, and then you have to go back, and then you go and maybe get that, and then you start here and you go forward. And I liked the idea that when you died, it was meaningful in that you learnt something more about what there'd be. So in Second Sight has things, it has reveals which only happen when you die. So if you sat down and played the game and didn't die and played all the way through it, there was a couple of things you wouldn't understand about it. And then it has this, it has these two timelines which it deliberately misleads the player as to how the timelines relate. So that was the idea for that. So yeah, I mean, I really like storytelling in games, and it's interesting in modern games now. There certainly in the indie space, there are people trying to do things with not procedural narrative, but with narratives where there's meaningful branching, which isn't all completely. The classic problem you have with a narrative is you introduce choice, it just goes geometrically out, and then that geometrically dilutes the effort that you can put into any of those things, so they just become bland. So you mentioned the Bandersnatch thing. That's interesting. I mean, it's interesting for a number of reasons, but to me it's interesting because it's people watching go, oh, it's so clever because it's also being really meta about itself.
Yes.
Yeah, but the reason it's meta about itself is it allows it to collapse all these things back in, and actually all of the kind of contextual errors and the kind of like errors and plot holes become part of the meta story.
Yes, yeah. It's clever in that regard.
Well,
Well, maybe not. There's a been around for ages anyway.
Well, but
There's
it's
books,
also there's books as well.
Turn to page 20. Kill the dinosaur. So you're into robotics now? Is that what you're teaching? Or?
Brought a robot for us then.
I have brought a robot. I've got lots of robots at home.
Yeah. I mean, is that what you're is it university? Is it your lecturer now?
No. So I at NUA here in Norwich, I do some teaching, which is kind of like game dev teaching. Although I guess mostly what I'm teaching is trying to get people to work together and communicate and stuff, because that's that's really important.
So within the gaming industry? Or?
Within teams.
Okay.
So people, people start on this. It's like, I want to be a games artist. I want to be a programmer. It's like I want to be, I want to be this one person team that does this. But you can't. You need other people if you're going to get the heavy lifting done. And that's a big. Working with people it's the communication is absolutely essential. And it's the hard part of the communication is having the harder conversations like, I said I was going to do this, but I've...
Yeah.
But I'm going to tell you now.
Yeah.
We could have done something about it last week, but I'm telling you now.
So we've still got another week where we could... So all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then since I've lived in Norfolk, I spent, particularly when girls were at primary school, I did a lot of kind of just support kind of after school club science and stuff, and doing some with there's a little programming language called Scratch, which is focused on it's a visual thing. So kids can use it quite easily. It's quite powerful as well. So I did a lot of teaching with that, and then I kind of like I always loved Lego and Lego robots and stuff. And he's got all this stuff as well. So robots are really fun to teach with programming, because there's the programming part of it, but there's also the thing about robots is that everything's imperfect as well. So it doesn't really know where it is. It knows there's something up against its nose. And then, it'll try and do something. I'll try and turn right. Oh, I've fallen off the table. So there's lots of thinking. Because what you're trying to do, I think a really important thing about computer stuff and programming is it's a really valuable thing to teach, because it teaches kids thinking and resilience and being adaptable, and that's what teaching needs to be now. Teaching is not, here's all the facts. I'm learned keeper of the facts, and I'm going to put them into your head.
One at a time.
That's pointless, because the facts that they need will have changed in 5 years' time. So they need to know, and they need to know how to be resourceful and filter and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. We've got a couple of quick questions that we normally ask people. One is who is the most? This might be interesting. But the most famous person you've ever met?
I think it's Stephen Hawking.
Oh, but that's pretty famous.
But it was quite strange, because it was fairly. So it was probably about 5 years ago, and I have a friend who's teaches at Cambridge, and they have a dinner where it's like just bring people. They bring people from outside the college to a dinner, and Hawking was at that college as Goldeneye and Keys, I think, at the time. But I met him in the kind of context of you're in a room and Stephen Hawking's in the room and he's there.
Okay.
And there's a bunch of other people, and it's kind of like you go over and.
Right.
But you don't go, you're Stephen Hawking! He knows who he is. You look just like him.
Record my voicemail message.
Do the thing. Hello. And that was very strange, because you're in a room and there's a person in the room who is astronomically the most famous person in the room.
Yeah.
But it's not like somebody who's going to give you all the banter and stuff.
Yeah, absolutely.
My friend Helen, remember she was saying it was quite strange. She was saying it was quite strange if you were ever at a kind of like a dinner with him, like college dinners. He'd be there, because you'd be kind of wanting to interact with him, but also thinking, am I just wasting your time? Because it's going to take you quite a long time.
Yeah, so
and what do I ask you? Do I ask you, are you enjoying the peas, or what is the meaning of life, the universe, and
It's
everything.
quite diverse range.
Where to pitch it.
Yeah. Did you shoot me?
What do you like
Take the
on
briefcase.
Netflix?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's very much how would you approach it? Yeah.
So I mean, I met a bunch of games industry people, but they're not famous about outside of that. But yeah, I think that was kind of like it was the one time where you kind of get the goosebumps off.
Yeah.
Actually,
obviously
you're over there.
Incredible person. Yeah. Most embarrassing situation you've ever.
When I went over again, you're Steve.
That's right. Yeah. And here he is. Yeah.
Teach me how to do your voice.
Yeah, especially that should be awkward. Yeah, we've had some interesting answers to that one, but
I don't know. I don't really get that embarrassed, so I can't really remember things.
Anything with the gaming industry that made a fluff up and and
You didn't accidentally refer to Star Trek in your Star Wars meeting, did you? Yeah, Mr. Spock's my no.
Oh, I suppose actually it kind of fits in with some of the stuff we talked about before when we were doing Haze.
Oh, this looks good. He wiped his eye for right. Yeah.
What for brow?
Yeah.
So it was a funny year. There was a year where E3 is the enormous big thing, Electronics Entertainment Expo, and it was always in when we did it. First of all, it was in Atlanta, then it was in LA. LA, it's a Staples Center where they do the basketball and everything. It's just an enormous place. And then one year, the year just before Haze came out, the games industry said, "Let's not do it this year." So, and everyone was going, "What?" And then they said, "Well, instead of doing that, what we'll do is we'll book some hotels down by, I can't remember where it was it might even been Santa Monica or something, and we'll have this kind of, it'll be very intimate. Little rooms, people doing presentations, and there won't be any kind of riffraff. So we're doing this, and so I was showing Haze, and kind of was on the back foot about it. We had a build on a PC. It wasn't great. There were loads of things which we would have liked to have done in it, but we hadn't implemented and stuff. So I'm kind of there showing this build, and you just kind of talk. You're just talking it up because I had faith in what the guys were going to be able to do, and and it's a bit strange because it's like it's like a team of nearly 100 people's work, and you're the public face of it, and you've got to sell it, and you've got things which you think God. And there was a kind of parade of people coming out. I know Cliffy B coming round. So he's the boss man. He's gone a bit ragey now, I think.
He has gone a bit, yes.
And he had something. He was like, "Oh no, it'd be really cool if you had if you shot them all, the goo came out." And I said, "Yeah, that would be good." Yeah. And it would have been good, but it was kind of like but it's kind of thing. And then Miyamoto came round, and I'd met him kind of a couple of times before, maybe once. So
this is Shigeru Miyamoto.
Is that
this is the
Nintendo?
Mario guy. Yeah. So he's the kind of he's the god of kind of Mario game design.
He may be above Stephen Hawking.
Yeah, I was going to say. Yeah, I've not heard of him.
And he does this thing where he kind of. I think he can speak quite good English, but he when it suits him, he doesn't. So we kind of like sharing. I said, "Well, this is the game," and of course they were going, "Oh, this is dog sand." Okay. So some people are just bringing up to speak. Oh, yeah, it's the GoldenEye guy. Yeah. So the guy worked GoldenEye, and that was a really important time then. Yeah, and I was showing this thing, and He's going, well, what happens? Well, they're taking, it's soldiers who are taking drugs and they're in this battle and stuff and things. And he's like,
no.
I would love to have shown him Time Splitters 2 or something when it was kind of like, it's like, because it was all, there was a lot of fun stuff in it and stuff. And he's a big fun guy. And it was just like, well, Mr. Miyamoto has to go now.
Doesn't speak English.
Yes.
Have you ever been in a local newspaper? I imagine you have, but is there any sort of gold there?
Yeah, well, I'm a big one when we were in Nottingham, which was kind of like fathers reading to their kids kind of thing.
Okay.
And I've been in, some of the kids teaching here, some of the kids at the primary school, they won a kind of coding competition at UEA, and that was just, it was a really things that are really nice, because it's like you go, being in a local, but if you're 10, being in a local newspaper is a brilliant, brilliant thing. So that was a really nice thing to be part of.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it does give the local newspapers give us some good gold charts with, but I remember, it's great put it at the barrel now.
Actually,
but
I can now reveal that I am the Midnight Round.
I did wonder why you're carrying so much fake blood with you and fence posts.
But just don't let that get out.
Okay, that would have been an amazing hidden level on GoldenEye, wouldn't it? Like a little fence that you can knock down.
Chipping bits on, making little hasty crucifix into the ground.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a pod, right? I think we're done. Is there anything you want to promote, Dave? I mean,
no.
Do you have social media handles or anything like that, or do you rather
I'm on Twitter. I try to tweet as Dr Doak on Twitter. I hadn't ever really done it, and then a couple of years ago, I was at this game. I don't go to lots of games things, but I gone to this retro games thing in Norway, of all places.
Oh, cool.
And I met a couple of YouTubers there. I'm not a big YouTube watcher.
Yeah, me neither. I'm a big doer, but
but it was really interesting. So it's JK, the completionist.
Yes.
Yeah. And Alex Faciani, I think his name. They're Super Beard Brothers, whatever. And they were really good fun to be with. And it was really interesting talking to them, because they had absolutely encyclopedic knowledge of games. You think you know games, and then you talk this. But he's like plays all these things, and they were saying, "Oh, you should, tweet." I kind of tried to put, but it's hard work.
So it's a parody of your character in GoldenEye, or
you're
being yourself.
He's a real person.
Yeah, I was going to say, So where's the briefcase? Right. Oh well, we can give some retweets and stuff. So what's it at David Doak? Or?
It's just it's to Dr Doak, I think.
Cool.
DRDOAK.
Yeah. We'll keep an eye out for that. Well, that was really interesting. Yeah.
Oh, well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for
good
coming
stuff. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. It's been fun.
Tremendous.
All right, cool.
Right.
Thanks, guys.
And they'll have cut it by now, so we can probably stop talking.
Yeah.
Barshens!